Okay, we are online now.
Okay.
Um, we will start in a minute.
Yeah.
Okay, so here we go. Good evening and welcome once again, and Children's Day greetings to all of you. And on my own behalf and on behalf of my colleagues, Ajay Gandhi, Amita Desai, and Kinnara Murthy, I welcome you all to this special session which HLF is doing in collaboration with the Gettys Inn from Hyderabad. And you would notice that we are coming to you at a special time today. Instead of our usual 7 p.m., we are coming to you at 4 p.m. today. This is specifically for the benefit of our young audience, to whom we are dedicating this session today. And so, children, for you, we have brought one of the best known storytellers of India today, Paro Anand, and I'm delighted to re-invite uh, Paro Anand to HLF because Paro was with us a couple of years ago at HLF and did some fantastic workshops with children. And so we are delighted to welcome her back to HLF. And for those of you who are interested in the profile of Paro Anand, which I doubt anybody would want, because you all know her writings, her books. She has more than 30 books to her name. And she has written for young children, she has written for young adults. She has also written books for grown-ups. So she has covered the whole gamut of writing. And but she, of course, besides being a writer, she's a fantastic storyteller, and particularly performance storytelling, dramatic storytelling. And she has traveled all over the country and abroad, many workshops and performances, to her credit. So without standing between you and, or rather sitting between you and Paro Anand, uh, welcome once again, Paro, to HLF, and we are delighted to have you back, particularly on this day, which we are celebrating, on the eve of Children's Day. And so I'm looking forward, like all the other children, I'm also looking forward to this story. So welcome once again, and over to you, Paro.
Thank you so much, Vijay, and thank you, Amita, for re-putting us back together again. I really enjoyed my brief time at the HLF some years ago, learned a lot there. And in this strange new and brave new world, we've learned to come together in whole new ways. And I was saying, somebody said that you have to learn to think outside the box. And I said, no, actually, in this case, we're having to think inside the box being the computer screen. And we have to think of ways of being creative within that screen, which is great. And I'm very honored to be back with HLF again, and would love to introduce some of my books to you. Where do we start? Okay, I'm going to start with, since the session is called A Quiet Girl, a Noisy Story, and a quiet girl, a noisy story, and a very naughty dragon. So these are the three books. And there are a couple more books actually that I decided that I'm going to talk about. This is A Very Naughty Bear. And this is a book called Being Gandhi, which is really asks, is Gandhi relevant today? So I'm going to start with A Quiet Girl, since that's the first bit of the title. So I'll start there. This is one of the books that I've written for young children. A Quiet Girl. When Pooja was born, her papa and mama were very happy. They had been longing for a baby of their own. And Pooja was a very peaceful child. She never cried. She never fussed. She only smiled and smiled and smiled. She smiled at her family. She smiled at their friends because she was so little. She didn't have friends of her own yet. She smiled at feathers floating by on the breeze. She smiled at leaves falling from trees. But most of all, she smiled at animals, at birds on the rooftop, at chickens in the coop, and dogs out for an evening walk. Beautiful illustrations by Taposhi Ghoshal. I'll show you a couple more as we go along. And it was very good that she liked animals because Pooja's papa and mama, they worked with Bulbul, a beautiful white mare, a girl horse. And they worked with her and she helped them earn a lot of money because when it was time for a wedding, what would happen? A bridegroom would get all dressed up and wear his veil of flowers called a sehra and sit on top of Bulbul, the white mare, and the bandwalas would be playing in front. And Bulbul would feel very grand. She enjoyed it. Of course, sometimes she felt that she wished that the Baratis, the people in the groom's procession, would stop dancing for so long so she could get home and get some rest. But Bulbul was looked after all dressed up and ready, and the procession. Isn't that lovely? So Papa and Mama looked after Bulbul, but Pooja smiled and smiled and smiled. As Pooja grew older, Papa and Mama realized that she was a little different from all the other children. When other children learned to Pooja would only smile and smile and smile. When other children learned to say, Mama, Pooja did what? You guessed it, she would only smile and smile and smile. And she had a very sweet smile because when she smiled, her eyes would disappear into half moons. When other children learned to say, Papa, Pooja, when other children started saying, I want it, Pooja only. When other children began to learn their ABC and 1, 2, 3, Pooja only. Papa and Mama were very worried. What if Pooja never learned to talk? All Pooja wanted to do was to spend time with her beloved Bulbul. There she is, Pooja, combing Bulbul's hair. But the parents were worried. Other children began to go to school. But Pooja didn't go because the teacher said we cannot have a child who doesn't talk. Then it happened. Bulbul had a tiny little foal. And the parents were very happy because they hoped that there would be another tiny girl, white horse, so that they could continue taking her also when Bulbul got too old and the little foal got old enough. They would take that new horse to the for wedding processions. But guess what? The new foal was not pure white. It had black patches on it. And it wasn't a girl horse, it was a boy horse. Oh no! Pooja's parents were very worried. What were they going to do? Finally, they decided that they would have to sell the foal. And when some people came to buy the new foal and they put a rope around the foal and they were leading her away, Pooja's eyes got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And suddenly a voice came, "Takbak! Takbak!" Everybody turned around. They'd never heard this voice before because it was Pooja. She had named the horse Takbak, and she and Takbak used to talk. So did the family sell the horse? If they didn't sell the horse, how did they pay for the upkeep of it? And now that we know that Pooja can talk, what is going to happen? And why didn't she talk all this time? And now I'll tell you where I got the idea for this book. I had to write a book, a little book, for Duckbill, who were the publishers, and they said, we want a short little chapter book. And I was wondering, I started writing one story, another story. I wasn't happy. And then I was watching TV news one day, and it struck me. Most of these people don't have anything much to say. They're just shouting, "Listen to me, listen to me, listen to me," and they're never saying anything. Isn't it better to be a person who only speaks when they have something important to say? Isn't that so? Now you're going to have to, I'm not going to tell you the whole story. I never do. So I'm going to leave that story there so that you can read what happened to Pooja and Takbak. All I can tell you is that the first idea was to get a girl who doesn't speak unless she has something important to say and write a story about that. And the second was a WhatsApp forward that I got, which I was so charming, unlike many WhatsApp forwards, that I thought, wow, I want to write that in a story. But I'm not going to tell you more. You're going to have to read the book and find out, right? And now I'm going to tell you Wingless, a fairly weird fairy tale. And this also is a book illustrated by one of India's very best illustrators. I was very happy that he agreed. Wingless, a fairly weird fairy tale. A princess is born. When Princess Chutki was born to the king and queen of angels, there should have been much rejoicing and happiness. There should have been music, festivals, feasts, and gifts. There should have been a smile on the face of everyone who lived in the silver and diamond land where King Quicksilver and Queen Sparkling Gem ruled justly and wisely, just as any good king and queen should in any good fairy tale. But none of these joyful things happened. No, musical instruments were broken. Blam! Festivals were banned. Firecrackers were banned. Feasts that cooks had been preparing for weeks and weeks were thrown away for kuttas and billies and kauas to feed on. Gifts wrapped and ready for the new princess were hidden away in darkest corners for dust to settle on and spiders to spin their webs on. The smiles on the faces of everyone turned to frowns or even tears, real watery, salty tears. Not the tiny diamonds and pearls that angels weep on the few occasions when angels weep. And those who wept hardest of all were King Quicksilver and Queen Sparkling Gem. Sorry. People who came to see her opened their eyes wide with horror as their jaws fell with loud thuds to the floor. Some were speechless and hurried wordlessly away. Still others could only weep and wash the floor with their tears. That's Delhi pollution. I beg your pardon. Still others had tongues that would not stop wagging. The kingdom of angels is doomed. The end is in sight. We must kill this freakish princess before she kills us. She has brought hell to heaven. She must be punished. She must be killed. As the news spread like wildfire, people started to gather at the palace gates. The king and queen, so worried for their precious little baby, carried her up into their arms, up the highest staircase, to the highest tower, up until they reached the highest room, and there they went in and they locked the door. As the news spread like wildfire, the wagging tongues grew louder and still louder, till all the kingdom was one big shout. Peace was shattered. Even the diamond domes of the palaces were cracking and tumbling down as the shouting grew to a fevered and maddening pitch. And the angels of the land all gathered outside the gate, all of them. Now, can you imagine if all of Delhi and all of Hyderabad and all of Bhopal and all of India and all of the subcontinent and all of Asia and all of the world, everybody is gathered in one place? And can you imagine if they're all hot, angry? We know that anger is a very hot emotion. You sweat, fire comes out of your ears, smoke comes out of your nostrils, you grit your teeth, your face gets red. Now, can you imagine if everybody in the world is mad angry and all in one place? What's going to happen to climate change then? The angels of the land started shouting in one voice, "Kill her! Kill her! Kill her!" The king's face grew gray with worry. The queen's face grew white with fear. But the shouting wouldn't stop. "Kill her! Kill her! Kill her!" "I just don't know what to do," said the king in a voice that was shaking with fear. "I don't know," said the queen, whose face was now as white as a page on which not a word has been written. The queen said in a voice watery with tears, "Let's ask Nanima. After all, she's 1,003 years old. Maybe she knows something about this and knows what to do." So Nanima was called. She was 1,003 years, so she was completely deaf. She hadn't heard the wagging tongues or heard the shouting voices. She only saw with amazement something very strange, because all those angels I told you gathered in one place, standing on those silver streets, also angry, and the streets melted and turned into silver streams, and the angels fell in and are swimming about and splashing about and still shouting, "Kill her, kill her, kill her." So Nanima wondering what's going on. "Must be some kind of new passion for fashion," she muttered to herself. She'd seen passions for fashions come and go, never liked a single one. Not for her, these crazy new handbags and clothes and hairstyles and shoes. She stuck to the fashions of 1,000 years ago, when women who were women wore sea green seaweed gowns. And these she still wore, keeping them fresh in underwater cupboards. Now she splashed through the rivers of silver, and she was shown to the palace door, where King Quicksilver and Queen Sparkling Gem sat sadly on either side of their baby's crib. "Oh!" she shrieked. "Why, how wonderful, Quick Gem and Sparkling Silver! You've had a baby! How good of you to call me!" She could never ever get their names right, not even her own daughter's name. So the king was King Quicksilver and Queen Sparkling Gem. And instead she says, "Oh, why, how beautiful, Quack Slicker and Sprinkling Gent." But as she lifted the baby up into her arms and the sheets fell off her, she let out a cry of alarm. "Oh, oh, oh! But what is this? This little baby has no wings. What is the use of a baby angel without wings? What is the meaning of this?" Her hands fluttered around like restless butterflies, coming to rest here and there. And here I'm just going to show you the very beautiful Nanima and the gorgeous little Chutki princess, who's born without wings. And that is why the name of the book is Wingless, right? What is the meaning of this sparking gent? Actually, we wanted to ask you the meaning of this, said the queen in a voice that would be rude to anyone but the hard of hearing. But the 1,003-year-old Nanima could not and would not hear. "Why, Quick Slicker and Sprinkling Gent," she shouted in a shaky voice, "I say that you are doomed." Then in a voice now edged in black lace, as is only proper when speaking of bad things, she continued, "What you have done, Quack Slicker and Cackling Head, no one has ever dared to do before. You are doomed for having brought hell to heaven. Only sorrow and tears will follow you now. Sorrow and tears." And like wind on a moonless night, she swept out of the palace, leaving only the fishy smell of old seaweed behind her. Why? Because she wore seaweed gowns. "Quack Slicker, oh, I mean Quicksilver, what are we going to do?" "I don't know, Cackling Hen. I just don't know," said the king. And he didn't even realize that he just called his wife a cackling hen. I'm sure many wives won't be happy with that. Through all of this, I may add that Princess Chutki was perfectly happy being a wonderful, happy little princess. She didn't care that she didn't have wings. She was just happy. "Let's ask Dadima," suggested the king. "If Nanima hasn't seen anything like this in 1,003 years, perhaps Dadima has. After all, she's 2,000 years and 364 days old." So even as the shouting from outside grew louder and still louder, Dadima was sent for. Now, Dadima, because she was 2,000 years and 364 days old, she couldn't hear and she couldn't see. So she merely swam. She didn't know about all the undress. She loved to swim. And so she swam in a race with herself. Her long hair flowed like serpents all around her. She wore her hair long, which was just as well because she wore nothing else. That's right. She wore no clothes. She was a Nangu Pangu Dadi. So she looked quite a sight. as she emerged, all dripping silver hair and flowing and creating shiny puddles as she strode, unseeing and unhearing, to stand before the baby's crib. The weeping parents led Dadima to the bed and put her hands on the baby. "A baby!" boomed the lady in a voice that shook the already cracking and crumbling domes. "Oh, why, son, well done!" she said, slapping the delicate queen hard on her back, which sent the poor queen into a long and lasting coughing fit. But Dadima didn't notice. She grabbed the baby bottom side up into her arms. She felt the baby's new and smooth bottom lovingly. My, what a smooth face this baby has. But for goodness sakes, where are its ears? Where is its nose? For goodness sakes, this baby has no lips. She was tickling the baby's bottom, and little Princess should keep wiggling away, feeling tickled pink. The king and queen managed to smile for the first time since their baby was born. And Quicksilver quickly turned the baby right side up so the grandmother could examine her more correctly. "Oh," said Dadima, embarrassed, realizing her mistake. "Thank you, my sweet daughter-in-law." Then, when the bedclothes fell off again, "Look here, there's something missing. Do you realize that this is an angel baby without wings? Do you know that angels must always, but always have babies with wings, son?" And here she threw the baby back to the parents and took a superb swallow dive out of the window. She dived because the road had become a river, because it had melted, because of all the anger, right? And remember, she was a very good swimmer. So, unfortunately, you know that when you've done a lot of playing in the water and swimming and all of that, what happens? You get hungry. So all the angels had decided to go home and have dinner. And they had taken their hot anger with them. So that silver river turns back into a silver road. And here comes Dadima. Fortunately, Dadima's long, thick hair broke her fall instead of her bones. Remember, she had very thick hair. But unfortunately, remember, she was also very old, and the roots of her hair were not that strong. And when she fell from that highest tower down onto a road, all her hair fell out. And you remember, she wore no clothes. So there's Nangu Pangu Dadima dusting the silver dust off herself. What is heaven coming to? Roads that become rivers, rivers that become roads, baby angels without wings. What next? What's next? And what's next is what you're going to have to find out when you read the book. Right? That is always my hope, that I'm going to tempt you to read Wingless, a fairly weird fairy tale. It really is a fun book. And once again, I'll tell you where the idea of the book came. You know, when I'm writing a story, I really get lost in the world of that story. So I'm sort of living in a parallel universe. And I was writing a book called No Guns at My Son's Funeral, which is about a young boy and terrorism, and how a young boy comes to sort of take up the gun. So it was a dark story, a sad story, and I was in a very dark space myself. And it becomes very hard for me to lead a normal life almost. because I am my character and I am living in his world. So I knew that for my own sanity, I had to write something else to lift me out of that darkness sometimes. And I have a very weird thing. I often write two books at the same time because if I get stuck with one, if I have writer's block with one book, I just jump to the other one. And in writing of that, that block turns out, dissolves as well. So I wanted to write something fun. I had also been wanting to write something on disability, on being different. Now, how to write a book on a special need person, which is funny, but being very cautious not to be disrespectful, right? So I was very lucky that the story Wingless did come to me and I was able to write that book. And I can tell you the book is now over 15 years old, which is a lot for a book. And it's still doing well, still being taught in many schools. And it's been done as a play in various places in India, many places in India, and also in Singapore and Sweden. Yep. And now it's the turn of a very naughty dragon. And I'm going to start with how this story began. Instead of telling you afterwards, I'm going to tell you now. So I had first written a book called A Very Naughty Bear, which is about a very naughty bear, of course, in Bhutan, and all the funny things that happened to this very naughty bear. And I was at a literature festival in Delhi, and I was chatting with a friend of mine, Jaya, whose daughter is Sarah, and Sarah is an avid reader, and she has been coming with her mother to literature festivals a lot since she was born almost. So the publisher of A Very Naughty Bear came up to us. We were standing there and said, Paro, Very Naughty Bear is doing really well. A lot of schools have enjoyed it, a lot of children have enjoyed it, and it's doing very well. So I said, hey, why don't we think of making it a series, right? A series like A Very Naughty, some other animal. Instead of bear, make it some other animal. So I turned to Sarah, who was there. She was 9 years old. And I said, Sarah, what animal would you like to see in the next book? And she said, I want Komodo dragon. So I said, oh gosh, I don't know much about Komodo dragons. I'm fascinated by them, yes, but I don't know enough. And she said, Paromasi, you're very good at writing. I'm very good at research. I'll help you. I'll give you the facts. So I said, why don't we write the book together? And right there and then we got matching diaries where we could make notes. And so this is a book co-authored with me and Sarah Rose. And Sarah was 9 when she wrote it with me and 10 when it was published. Isn't that fantastic? So I'm going to read you a little bit from here. When Draco is the name of this dragon, and when Draco was born, he was named by his father, who was a huge 150 kilo, 10-foot long, handsome Komodo dragon. And he named him Draco because on Komodo Island, he had sneaked in to a movie hall and seen which movie? You know which movie? Harry Potter. And he had been fascinated by Draco, and he thought that he would name his son Draco, and that's how the name came to be. But actually, that was Sarah's suggestion to name him Draco. And the father, of course, you know that they live in on Komodo Island in Indonesia, okay, where they speak a language called Bahasa Indonesia, right? And the Papa would say, I'm off on a hunt. Draco, tell me what you want for dinner. I'll bring that back for you. And Draco would say, Bapak, Bapak, when can I go hunting with you? Bapak means father. And the father would say, not yet, little one, but that day will come soon. And he would tell Draco all about the special powers that Komodo dragons have. And then he would smile with his big, serrated teeth. Bapak, Bapak, when will my teeth become that big? Not yet, little one, but that day will come soon. And then he would flex his long, powerful, muscly tail and break a small tree. Draco would try to, but he couldn't even break a branch. Bapak, Bapak, when will I learn to break things with my tail? And of course, you know the answer. Not yet, little one, but that day will come soon. Well, what happens is that Draco decides to go off into the jungle and practice. And he wants to be able to break things with his tail, and he wants to learn a very special skill of climbing trees. He loves to climb trees, but he wants to do it quietly, and he wants to learn to pounce on his prey, but he wants to do it quietly. He wants it to be a surprise for his bapak when he comes back from the hunt. But instead, when he pounces, he goes pachak. When he tries to climb up a tree, he goes fatak. Oh dear, this is not working at all. Suddenly there's Draco, who was lying winded on the ground where he had landed from falling off the tree, looked up, and the macaque monkeys were running up and down the tree and were laughing at him and singing. And when one of them started to sing a very rude song, Ketchung dang, petchung dang, Draco is a ketchung dang, petchung dang, Bodo pandir ketchung dang, which meant they were calling him silly. They were calling him a loser. They called him stupid. All the other macaque monkeys started and they all started singing the song, and you can sing it with me. Ketchung dang, petchung dang, Draco is a ketchung dang, petchung dang, Bodo pandir ketchung dang. Bruised, winded, and very sad, Draco tried to pull himself up and say, hey, don't make fun of me. I'm a dragon. Ha! What kind of a dragon are you? If you were a real dragon, you could fly. So Draco tried to spread his legs out and fly, but pachak, of course he went down. Of course he couldn't fly. If you were a real dragon, there would be smoke coming out of your nose. And Draco thought, maybe I could do that. He took a deep breath. He exhaled a big thing, hoping that big fire and smoke would come out of his nose. But instead, something quite yucky came out. Yuck! And all the other squirrels and all the other monkeys were only making fun of him. But do you know, things did happen, because Draco showed that he was no loser and he was not stupid at all. So I hope that you enjoyed the stories, and that we are going to get the opportunity to hear many more stories. Just quickly wanted to also share about being Gandhi. Again, I'm going to tell you how this book came about. It was a book I never thought I would write. I wouldn't dream of writing. But my editor said, Paro, please, can you write a book on Gandhi? And I said, no, because what more is there to say about Gandhi that children haven't been taught in schools? But when I read what there was on Gandhi, basically in the textbooks and all of that, I realized that we have made him so boring for children. I mean, I know that when I go with this book to schools and I say, I'm going to talk to you about Gandhi, they're like, oh. So my challenge was, how am I going to show how relevant Gandhi is today? Because the more I read on Gandhi in preparation for this book, the more I realized what an amazing person he was. But most important, that he wasn't a god, he was a man. He was a person, a human being like you and me. And if he could do it, we can do it. And that all of us have a little bit of Gandhi in us, in each of us. We have to dig deep and find our inner Gandhi, discover our inner Gandhi, and be a bit better. So, ending on a little bit of a serious note, it's not a serious book, it's actually a fun book. The title of the first chapter is My Life Sucks, Just Sucks. And you'd wonder, how can a book on Gandhi have a chapter like that? But the fact is that it's not about Gandhi the man. It's about the way he lived, the Gandhian way. And it's about how relevant Gandhi is today. So it's not about the freedom movement, the throwing out of the British. It's not even set in that era. It's set much, much later, a much more contemporary time. Anyway, again, read the book, and I hope you will. I hope you enjoyed all of these books, and that at least one of these books you're going to want to read and read some more. Right. So I think.
Paro, please do tell us one interesting story from Gandhi's life that you have written.
Well, what I found, the premise of the book is that there's this child and he's been named Chandrasekhar, a name that he hates. And he thinks that his parents were just so mean to have named him Chandrasekhar. But he also feels, why do we have to keep studying Gandhi all the time? Why can't we study about other freedom fighters? But his teacher gives him a homework assignment to be Gandhi. Everybody else has the assignment to do it for a day, but she tells him, because of course, he's always in trouble with the teacher, as I was always in trouble with my teachers. And he has to be Gandhi for a week, and he decides, I'm not going to do this homework. No way, I'll write some bakwas and I'll do it. But then something happens. Shall I read a little bit from it?
Please do.
Okay.
Please
okay.
do.
Yeah. This is not my reading copy. So usually I mark out my copies. I can't find the portion that I want to read. Nope. That's funny, isn't it? I'm getting there. Yeah. We see it on television first. The attacks have started. 6 are being pulled out of their cars, out of their homes, out of buses, out of their places of work, and they're being attacked, killed, burnt. I feel as if I'm growing up every second, aging, like my own life is in fast forward and my teen years are zooming towards adulthood. The television volume is finally turned down, but the fire cannot be controlled by the tap of a button. The embers are catching and the flames are going out of control. It is then that the shouting seems to come closer. We all turn to the television to see if someone has turned the volume back up, but no one has. The sounds are not out of a box. They are outside our door. At first, the shouts are confusing, but pretty soon the words separate enough for us to make out what the crowd in our corridor wants. Blood. The crowd is baying for blood. My own blood freezes. Were they coming for us? We all stand in a frozen tableau of terror. My mother moves first. She runs to make sure that the doors are bolted and locked. She tries to push the heavy sofa against the door so that in case the mob is trying to come in, they will be stopped. She turns to my father and says, "Help me." But he's standing there. He shakes his head. "It's not for us," he says. "It's not for us." And like a jigsaw, everything falls in place in that moment. And I can see it as if I can see through the door. They have not come for us. The mob has come for Uncle Sarab and his family because they are Sikhs. They are a Sikh family, a Sardar family, who live in the flat opposite. And this is just after the 1984 riots, when the Sikhs were being attacked because she was killed by her Sikh bodyguards. Mom is trying to pull the sofa all by herself. I can see that she's crying. I try to help her. "Mom, what'll they do?" "Mom, but they're just children. They're my friends. Can we go and get Kiran and Sarab instead? Please." But we can't. The sounds of breaking and burning and screaming burst in upon us from across the corridor. No, I'm not saying it was as bad for us as for them. Our plates and glasses are not smashed. Our furniture is not burnt. Our skin is not cut. Our bones are whole, but our lives are not. And I know that we are not the same and never will be again. With every cry for help knocking at our door, we lose a little bit of ourselves. And I go and sit on my bed, and there's a scatter of books on Gandhi that my teacher made me borrow. And I pull one open, and the words suddenly make sense to me. In a gentle way, you can shake the world. Peace and revolution are not mutually exclusive. And a shiver goes down me. And I wonder, can little old odd me really be Gandhi?
Lovely, lovely. What a moving episode.
Thank you. Thank you.
Lovely. And it is so interesting that suddenly there seems to be a kind of a renewed interest in Chaurasi, because I know that a couple of books have come out, and there is also a demand for a public memorial to be built
Right.
in Delhi.
Yeah.
So, wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the sad thing is that such incidents go on.
Yeah.
Experience them in Delhi.
Hmm.
It's just decided that one group decides we're going to hate that group. And we'll do everything to prevent them progress. We'll do everything to destroy them. For what? And sometimes you hear children speak hate, but it's a hate they don't understand. It's what I call herd hatred. They've heard it. Along with the dinner and along with nourishing food, we also feed them hate, and we have to be careful of that. And even Wingless is really about being different.
Yes.
And that we don't need to fear what is different. If we could make those concentric circles, overlapping circles, instead of separating out, social distancing notwithstanding, I think the world would be a better place, wouldn't it?
Yeah, sure. And that's why I think your other book, the other, is so interesting, because it's a collection of stories about, how we construct the other. Even if the other does not exist, we always need an other, to define ourselves.
That's right. And the other is really on the otherization of anybody else.
True.
Because I will never otherize myself. Somebody else will otherize me. And it's a very dangerous thing, because eventually there's a very beautiful poem which I heard at the Kolkata Literature Festival on this boy who thinks, isn't it funny that that kid doesn't have a mother? Isn't it funny that that guy limps? Isn't it funny that so-so doesn't have a phone? Isn't it funny that this and that? And the whole poem is, isn't it funny? And isn't it funny? And isn't it funny? Pointing fingers at everybody. And the last line is, and isn't it funny that I'm always on my own?
Yeah.
It's really powerful.
Paro, there are a couple of comments, and comments, of course, they're all going gaga over your narration and your expressions and your modulation of voice.
Thank you.
And so on. But one or two questions, of course, you seem to have inspired a couple of people to write, or at least complete their stories, because there was one message in the chat box which says, you are so inspiring, Paro ma'am. I'm motivated to complete my story now. So you have helped a writer's block to, somebody to...
I'll share my secret with you.
Please do.
Just before we started, Vijay, you said, oh, you've written 2 books, you published 2 books this year. The reason for that is that I'm a very disciplined writer. I write every single day. And if I have, come to the end of the day without finishing, I'll sit up at night and finish my 2 hours. That's it. I write 2 hours every day. And I have a log of it. And if I haven't finished 2 hours at the end of the week, I haven't completed it, I'll do it over a Saturday, Sunday. Otherwise, I can take a break. And I learned a very interesting and useful secret formula, which I can share with you. And the secret formula is BIC. This is especially for the person who has written saying that I want to now sit down, I'm inspired to sit down and complete. BIC, which stands for bottom in chair. It literally means put your bottom into a chair and write. That's all you need.
Yeah.
This is one of the few things that you don't need anything. You just need yourself. It doesn't matter whether you're writing on paper or on a computer or tablet or anything. Doesn't matter. Because you're writing from here and you're writing from your heart.
And what you said about writing 2 books simultaneously also gave us a wonderful insight into how to manage, this kind of roadblock that very often writers face. Right?
Because it scares me. A writer's block really scares me. And so I'll jump into the next book. And so often I have 2 books a year.
Yeah. I thought you were writing with both hands simultaneously. Being ambidextrous.
Harivansh Rai Bachchan used to do that, His mind worked so fast. that his right hand, which was his normal hand, his writing hand, would start cramping because he had so much to write, he couldn't stop. So he taught himself to be ambidextrous. When his right hand cramped, he would write with his left, and then when his right hand rested, he would.
But also there is a question here about this is Nikhat Parveen who is asking, in Wingless, a serious issue like disability, you have dealt with such ease and fun, and it's so engrossing and amazing. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it was a challenge because I have tremendous awe and respect for people who live such positive lives with great disability, what we call disability, and yet how they overcome it and all. I have great regard. And so I knew I wanted to represent them through a story, but how to write a funny story. I didn't want to write a dark story. I wanted to write a positive story. I wanted to write an uplifting story. And it came to me. It doesn't always, but yeah, this one came.
Yeah, but you also showed us some wonderful illustrations. So I was wondering, what is your take on the new mode of writing? The graphic novels and things like that.
I have a wonderful graphic novel which I wrote, which came about in the most interesting way. I was part of an Indo-Swedish writers illustrators workshop in Goa, and we were put into groups of one Swedish writer, one Indian writer, and one illustrator from either country. And all the other groups, you know how it is sometimes in school, that all the groups are, at it and going, their projects are happening. And we three were just completely frozen. We didn't know what to do. We had no common ground. We'd never met before. We went on a boat and into the sea. We were in Goa. We went on a boat and we saw two dolphins jumping up. And we turned to each other and said, let's write a book about dolphins. Let's place it in Goa. So just randomly, these couple of things happened. Eventually, the illustrator opted out of the project. But Orion Persson and Orion came and stayed with me. That's the Swedish writer. He came and stayed with me. I went and stayed with him and in Sweden, and we were writing, and it was quite difficult. And what we decided was to write the same story. I wish I had a copy handy, but I don't. But it's the same story told from two different points of view. And when we gave it to the illustrator, she said, wait, this is a graphic novel waiting to happen. And if there's two writers, there should be two illustrators. So it's four people creatively contributing. And it's called Two because there's two everything.
Yeah. I just got a message on my WhatsApp from a well-known journalist called Venugopal from Hyderabad. And he says, great session. I saw it along with my son. Thank you, HLF, and thank you, Paro.
Thank you so much, Venugopal. Thank you. It's a pleasure. And I think this has been one of the wonderful things about Zoom sessions is that parents are able to attend things that their children have been, which hasn't happened that much.
And since you are talking about Zoom session, there is a question here which says, ma'am, I used to write a lot of stories during lockdown. Now I find it more interesting to write stories and explain it. Thank you for this insight.
Thank you. I've also done a lot of writing during lockdown.
And there is also a question about how these stories can be used in school and whether each book comes with an age group mentioned on the book.
Honestly, I don't fully agree with age grouping because I like for the age groups to be, I mean, I came from a home of open shelves. I didn't read very much as a child, but the very first book that I read cover to cover and wanted to read again, as soon as I finished it, was Born Free by Joy Adams. It was a book for adults. But so, but yeah, of course, I understand that sometimes you need to get some idea. The best is to leave books there and let children decide what they'd like to read. And if it's beyond their understanding, they'll drop it. They bash on with a book that they're not understanding. The books must be used in schools. I think stories are a very safe space to talk about very difficult subjects. For instance, I have a book on domestic violence, and the number of children who come to me and say, "Thank you for writing this. It's happening in my home." You know? It's not, I mean, obviously, it's not a subject that if you were to come into class and say, how many children have domestic violence in their homes, nobody's going to stand up and say it. But stories open our gateways into the heart, into the mind, into the troubles, into the questions and confusions of young people. And it's a great start. So you should read the same books as your children are reading in classrooms. There's so much that can be taught from Wingless, and it is. No Guns at My Son's Funeral has been on the CBSE list as well and is taught extensively in schools. I have a brand new book called, yes, let me show my brand new book. Where is it? It's disappeared. Oh dear. I thought I'd kept it handy to show you.
Is this Nomad's Land?
No, Nomad's Land.
Nomad's Land.
Nomad's Land.
Yeah.
Can I just?
Yeah, sure.
Right here. So this is Nomad's Land, a beautiful cover, published by Talking Cub of Speaking Tiger. And it's about displacement, migration, post-migration. And you know that we've seen so much of it recently.
And I take this opportunity also to inform our viewers that Paro Anand is also going to do another session at the Gete Centrum, Hyderabad on 26th. Is that right? 26th, right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah,
that's
26th of this month. So please do join. That will be not so much for children, but as Paro Anand said, all those which are actually supposed to be for children, I think the message actually is for the adults. So, most children's stories.
If I'm not mistaken, there are 2 sessions that day.
Yes, there are 2 sessions that day.
One is for young adults.
Young adults,
and then young adults, and one is for adults.
Yeah.
So I'm doing 2 sessions on the.
True. And there is one more question here in the chat box, Paro. This is Varshit, who is asking, he loves writing stories and wishes to publish them. But is there some way that someone can guide him and improve his writing? So this is something that I also wanted to ask. Yeah. Are there institutions, organizations which help in writing or honing one's skills?
Honing one's skills. Actually, there are some very interesting writing workshops online. Some of them with fantastic writers. I think a great platform is if you start a blog and you start writing a blog. It's actually very good practice, because then you start getting feedback and is it working, not working, and look out for writers' workshops. Buckaroo has some writing workshops as well.
And I like your advice of BIC.
Yeah. It actually works, Yeah. It's as simple as that.
There's one more interesting question. This is Mohan, who says that my son was not interested when I told him about this session, but he rejoiced while watching watching you narrate. Thank you, Paro, Anand, HLF, and Get His Intro.
Thank you so much. Thank you. That's it. You know, it makes everything worthwhile.
Yeah.
Your comments like that.
And Mahesh says that these days I'm not reading much, too many stories, but your session has made me interested in reading books once again.
Yay. Yeah,
Wonderful.
actually reading, you know, I've been on so many panels and radio shows and television and all that. And the question inevitably is children aren't reading anymore.
Mm,
And my counter question to that is how much are you reading?
yeah,
How much are adults reading? Don't pin it all on children. Get the if children see their adults reading, they will read.
yeah.
My own home, we had an hour every day where we sat and read, and that's all we did at that time.
And in fact, I mean, now that you say that, I almost said the same thing, at a meeting. This was a library committee meeting, which had parents and children and everybody coming and attending this meeting. So the usual, rant of the parents is that children are not reading, they are not interested in reading, etc. So I just asked them two simple questions. I said, when did your child see you last reading something? Right?
Which is not the newspaper.
Yeah. And the second is, when is it the last time that you took your child to either a book exhibition or a bookstore, right? Or to a festival, literary festival? And how often do you take your child to a mall?
Yeah,
Right?
correct.
And so if a child does not see the grown-ups reading, where does that child get the idea from?
That's right.
And this
And you
open
have to
shelf,
see it as a cool thing to do.
yeah, yeah. And this open shelf is something very interesting because I know a couple of NGOs which have started this, where they are putting in their own money and making a small library of 70 books in a kind of a cupboard, and they are taking that cupboard, and anybody who wants to let it be installed there, they are leaving the cupboard there. So people can just pick up a book that they are interested, and they have put it in vague places like barber shops, because
Yeah.
at least men end up spending at least half an hour waiting for their turn,
Yeah.
right? And similarly in these gated communities, right, community halls, so they are just leaving those books there, so people take a book that they are interested and leave a book that they have read. So it works as a kind of a continuous flow, in and outflow of books. Right. I think there is more that can be done with 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 how to develop reading, and particularly, as you said, if you make it look a kind of a cool thing to do, maybe that's something that that will catch up.
But I'm also very encouraged by the number of publishers who have just come back into or come into publishing children's books. HarperCollins had stopped, Penguin had stopped. They've come. Duckbill, Pickle Yolk, such fantastic. There's Shobha's kya hai uska naam?
Cover details.
The cover details and all of that. So, and yeah, they may not be doing booming business or anything, but they've come into it. And also the number of children's literature festivals that there are, and how hugely attended.
True.
That the Buckaroo Festival had a lovely space, and it's a big space. It's about 5.5 acres of a space with some building and all in it also. But they've had to move out because it's too small. There's too.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So lovely once again, Paro, and thank you for sharing your stories with us. And I'm sure our both young and not so young, and as we said, those who are young at heart have all
Yeah.
enjoyed the session, and I'm sure there are more books coming our way. And please,
Yes.
I just want to remind everyone that Paro Anand is going to do two sessions on 26th of this month for the Get Centrum Hyderabad. Do
One
attend
for
them.
12 and 12 years and up to adult,
Correct.
and one for adults.
One for adults, and those two sessions, you will of course find the information. And before we leave, I just wanted to make two quick announcements. Please do subscribe to the HLF YouTube channel and click on the bell button so that you get notifications every time we go online. 15 days from now, we will be back at our usual time, 7 p.m. And our next speaker would be Lord Meghnad Desai, and he will be speaking to us about his latest autobiography. And this will be on the 27th of November. And please remember, we will be back at our usual time at 7 p.m. on 27th November. So once again, on my own behalf and on behalf of my colleagues, Ajay Gandhi, Amita Desai, and Kinnara Murthy, and the entire HLF and GZ team, thank you once again, Paro, and this wonderful evening. We couldn't have asked for anything better on the eve of Children's Day.
Happy Children's Day and happy Diwali to everyone.
Everyone. Thank you very much,
So much
and
for
good evening.
the support. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.